The Ban-Nighe by Dorothy K. Haynes. There were only 3 colors left in the world: the purple of the night clouds, the yellow streaks in the western sky, and the color of the river, dark green, like a channel filled with broken bottles. The water came smooth round the bend, a motionless black incline, then chopped into little green waves as the river broadened. The girl dragged her feet a little, raking the white frill of pebbles by the river bank. She was thinking of the croft just beyond the last hum of the moor. She had 3 miles to walk to her work in the morning, and 3 to walk back at night. They kept her so late at Knock Hollow, cleaning and carrying then cleaning again, that it was nearly always dark before she got home. In the winter, when the snow was too deep to be crossed, she only came home once a fortnight. Sleeping at Knock Hollow, with the winds roaring round the turrets and draughts creeping round the corners, she shivered for her friendly warmth of her own bed, with her sisters sharing the same plaid and pillow, and the fire left on all night, glowing red on the rough walls. In the summer, where Jeannie kicked and scratched, and Ian was coughing through the wall, trying to smother the noise in the blankets, she grasped for the loneliness which at least allowed her room to breathe. She lived in a perpetual dream of being otherwise, but did not realize it, because she did not know what she wanted. At the end of her day's work, all her thought was to be home again, free to sit or sleep, with nothing to do. The heather had faded to grey. The trees beyond the river were like black paper shapes gummed against the sky, and bats were nothing but flickers in the air. In the gloaming sounds carried a long, long way, distinct as a bell in an empty room. The girl stopped to listen to the loneliness. A bird shrieked in the trees and flew away, trailing a sob behind it. Something darted from the heather, rattled a stone and fled, and from somewhere by the waterside came the splash-clap noise of a woman washing clothes. It rose above the glug and gargle of the current, stopped for a while, and began again. It would be her mother washing out something for Ian. When he coughed a lot and spat red mouthfuls into the jar by his bed, his clothes were often soaked with sweat, and his mother, having no water in the house, would take them down to the river, rinse them, and leave them outside to dry. The splash-clap grew louder, then stopped as Mary drew near enough to see. "Mother," she called. "Will I help you, Mother?" The woman did not answer. She was bent double, dabbling with her hands, a dim white smudge in the greyness. Her white gown was down to her ankles, and the garment she was washing clouded the water like milk. It looked as if she had risen suddenly, urgently from her bed, and hastened to the river while still asleep, treading trance-like on heather and wristle. She rubbed and rinsed at some stain, soused and splashed the water, then stood up, lifting streaming white linen at arm's length, wringing it, flapping it, and soaking it again. Suddenly, disturbed, she looked over her shoulder, and Mary saw that it was not her mother at all. This woman was short, with a withered, mean face, and small, horrible feet grappling the ground, bare, webbed like a duck's. The girl stepped back, too frightened to speak. One more backward step, and she was running and stumbling over the stones, looking over her shoulder to see whether the ugly woman was following. Her legs were wet, spattered with drops, as if the washer had whirled the wet garment to strike her. She could see nothing now but a white shadow standing quite still, staring after her. Inside the kitchen, Her mother was warming milk at the fire, big and comforting, with her hair halfway down her back. She put a cup and plate on the table and lifted a finger to her lips. "Jeannie is just sleeping," she said. "Dinna wake her." "Mother, mother!" "Whisht, can ye? What is it? Is there trouble up Knockhollow for ye?" "No, no, mother. Mother, there's a woman down there washing. I don't like the look of her. You should have seen the way she glowered at me, and the ugly face of her." "Mary, did she speak to you? Did she speak?" "No, but she would have come at me if I'd waited." "Did you speak? Ask her anything?" "I only said mother. I thought it was you washing like you sometimes do for Ian. Then she turned." "What was she washing, Mary, for the love of God? Did you see?" "Something white, I don't know. I didn't like it. Mother, what's wrong? What have I done, mother?" "God help us, child, you'll wake your brother. He doesn't need to know yet. Mary yon was the Bean-Nighe that washes the shrouds of the dying. Bless you, nibble feet, that she didn't catch you, Mary, or she'd have lamed you for your life. There was old Donald Fergus that she caught up on the hip with the wet shroud, and he never walked again." "But whose shroud?" "Somebody soon to die." "Oh, Holy Mother, and he took a bad turn this day after his breakfast. 3 cups of blood, and him still weak from the last bleeding he took." "Ian?" "Aye. She's have told you that, if you'd crept up and held her. She has to answer if you catch her first, but the risk's not worth it. It's Ian she's washing for." "But she has no right. She's got no right to come and tell people things like that. What right has she, with his shroud getting in ready before he needs it?" "Hush, dearie, quiet. It gives us time to prepare. It's a sorry job for her too to wash the dismal things all night long, always desolate. Even God must be sorry for the poor creature sometimes." In the morning she did not go to work. The horror of the Bean-Nighe was upon her, and she was afraid to leave the house. Let the cook at Knockhollow storm in her kitchen. Let her housemaid do the menial tasks herself. She would stay away till the death was past, and her brother's body carried over the threshold. "What's wrong with Mary?" asked Ian, pale among the pillows, beautiful as no man ought to be. "Oh, she had a sick turn during the night," said the mother. "I'm keeping her off work for a day or 2. Poor mother." He twisted his lips, trying not to cough. "Always somebody ill in the house. Never mind, I'm better this morning. It won't be long till I can fish again." The woman turned away before he saw her tears. He was always so sure he would be well again, always talking of the river, where the salmon printed silver circles in the air as they leaped under the sun. As the day grew hotter, he was carried out to sit at the door, and Mary sat beside him, silent, till he wondered why she could not speak to him. She felt she could not leave him for a moment, must make the most of her time with him, but she was in agony lest she should say one rash word. The river was a navy blue line in the distance. The moor heaved slanting shoulders of brown and yellow, and the sun burned like a spot of bright solder. Their mother worked, and Jeannie worked. Only the girl and her brother were idle. They sat limp in the quivering air. He, tired with the heat. She, tired with terror. Remembering her father's death, she tried to think what it would be like to lose Ian. There would be some sombre waiting at the bedside, and the flatness of the moment when it was all over. There would be black clothes to buy, a coffin, and a funeral to pay for. It cost a lot to drive horses over the moor to the graveyard. There would be festivity of a sort, eating and drinking, a gathering together of neighbours far distant, and after that, A little more room in the house. No more nights disturbed with his coughing. No more sickening glimpses of blood in the jar by his bedside. She thought of these things as she sat beside him, and she could hardly believe them, because things like that belonged to dreams and stories. Nevertheless, she never doubted her mother. If it was possible for her to see the web-footed washer, and there was no doubt that she had seen her, it was possible for the omen to come true. It did not occur to her then that she could be washing the shroud for anyone else but Ian. It could not be for Jeannie, who was a healthy elf, able for a woman's work, not for her mother, who was only brought to bed when her children were born, not for herself, because such things could not apply to one so ordinary. No, it was Ian who was going to die, and though it would be cruel to tell him, it would be a mortal sin to let him die unprepared. But 2 days have passed, and Ian did not die. The mornings broke blue and hazy, and the sun shifted till its heat bore into the head like pain. The heath rustled underfoot, the flowers whitened and dried, and the rocks burned. Only the thistles seemed to thrive, their green silver spikes tense with strength, their plumes burning like brook-grass jets. The second night passed, and on the third day Ian was better than he could have been for many months. It might be true that he would one day die of his sickness, but when? Would it be within the year, or the month, or the week? Since all must die, the ban-sìth tells you only of the death which is soon to strike. Perhaps it was not his shroud. Then whose? The work of the croft was left undone. Who could tend land and cattle when there was so soon to be death in the house? Jeannie did not know what worried the elders, but she would not work when everybody else idled. True, the house has been clean ready for the funeral, but it has been done so quickly, and now there was not enough work inside for 3 pairs of hands. Ian did not notice. Sunk in his book, drowned in deep ponds of print, he lay at the door and heeded nothing. Time went by like a slow, hot cloud, and life stood still, waiting for death to come and free them from their waiting. On the third night, a faint breeze of doubt troubled the watchers. Nothing had happened. Perhaps nothing would happen. Ian was cheerful, his cough nothing more troublesome than an odd huskiness in the throat. Mary began to worry about her work. She did not care for scrubbing stone floors and running here and there with never a minute to herself, but the drudgery of a big household was better than the idleness of suspense. Up at Knock Hollow there was laughter in the kitchen and comradeship below stairs. She spoke to her mother about it. "Mother, hadn't I better be going back to work? Perhaps they'll not take me back at all if I stay away too long." "Go back to work, and your brother like to die at any minute. Shame, Mary, the least you can do. But, mother, he is not dying yet. Is he not better at himself? Wouldn't you say so now? Oh, merciful Lord, I don't know what I'd say. If it wasn't for you swear you saw the washerwoman. Mother, would it be among us the death had to be? Are you sure it would be among one of us?" "It would. Who else is there? Can you see any other house across the moor? Is there any other family near us? It was one of us that saw the Bean-Nighe. And isn't it likely to be Ian who would go next? Him that has the same trouble as his father. Would you say it was one of the healthy ones that would be taken?" "No, only Ian is better, and we might have to wait and wait. I'd rather it would come at once, mother. I don't like to wait on, not knowing." The woman went to the door and looked at the river. It was sunken and dry, hardly visible in its channel. She looked at her daughter, and her eyes were half frightened at the suggestion she made. "Mary, There's only one way to know. You'll have to ask her. Ask her? Oh no, I wouldn't go by her again. She's frightsome, Mother. You'll have to. If you don't find out, we'll never know till it's too late. Any one of us might be taken, and Ian left. We might be taken sudden, and no time to prepare. If it should be Ian, we can tell him. I don't think he'll fear to die. But if it's not Ian? Suppose he say it's you. How will I tell you? Or if it's me, what would I do? What's before us will not go past us. We're as well to know it all when we know it half. Listen and I'll tell you how to manage. You'll have to mind yourself. Creep soft, as quiet as you can, so she won't hear you, or know you're there. Then catch hold of her tight, so she can't get away. Can't you do it instead of me? You don't know how she glowered at me. I couldn't face yon again. It's best for you to go, seeing you saw her last time. If you grasp her tight, she can't harm you. It's like a nettle. Wouldn't you come with me? Someone has to mind Ian. Go now like a good girl, Mary. When it's dark, that's when she comes. There were only 3 colors left in the world: the purple of the night clouds, the grey of the heather, and the long black line of the river. She had waited for a long while in the house, sitting at the fire till both Ginny and Ian were asleep. Now it was so dark that the afterglow had drained out of the sky, and the trees across the river were as vague as tumble-down steeples. Long before she reached the place, she heard the splash-clap of the washer. Tonight no bird called, no bat was aflutter, no small-legged thing scattered among the roots and stones. The sound was much louder. Her throat burned with a sour fluid of fear. Her face went cold, yet she could not turn back. She stood and stared at the river, straining to see with her eyes what she was already seeing in her mind. The strange washer was there. Seen like this, anonymous in her white garment, she was pathetic rather than horrible. Bent over the water, the white shroud slapping as they beat it on the stones, she was only a tired, sad body washing in the dark. There was a world of heartbreak in the way she lifted the linen, the water dripping from it in silver fringes. Was she there every night, or did she move from river to mere and swamp whenever her ghastly work awaited her? Mary wanted to weep at the misery of the thought, but fear and the questions she had to ask made her wary. She took off her shoes and crept barefoot towards the river. The Bean-Nighe went on washing, deafened by the sludge and splash of your work. The girl's lip was between her teeth, her breathing fast and heavy, her heart beating like a muffled bell. One hand was stretched out to touch the trailing white hem, when a stone slipped under her foot. She stumbled, her hands blind in front of her. The being turned, her small face crude and angry. There was a whirl of wet cloth, the stinging smack of wet cloth on bare legs, and Mary was lying alone, with a dark river beside her, and not another soul in sight. After the Bean-Nighe had gone, the sounds of the night began again. The air was full of the flutter of wings. The trees rustled, and owls answered each other across the river. It was the first drop of rain that roused the girl, her head shielded by her arms, her shoulders raised, cowering from ill usage. She pulled herself together and tried to rise. Her legs seemed to be made of lead. The stinging had left her flesh, and all she could feel was a numbness, a dull numbness, an aching suggestion of pain to come. Whimpering, goaded by fear to a desperate strength, she knotted her muscles and forced and strained to move herself, Her legs lay useless, like two heavy sandbags anchoring her to the riverbank forevermore. The rain came quicker now, and quicker, hissing into the river. The night was very black. She raised herself on her arms and dragged herself slowly, slowly, but the rain seemed to force her down and weary her. Suddenly, in despair, she gave up and screamed for her mother. The footsteps came rushing over the brow of the little hill. Her mother had left Ian, the house, everything, when she heard the wild howl of her. "Walk, Mary lass," she kept pleading. "Try for the love of God." But Mary could not walk. The woman carried her in her arms to the croft, sure-footed with love, keening all the way. It was only when they were safe in the kitchen, with the moor and river shut out, that they remembered that a deeper tragedy was still in store for them, and they did not know on whom it would fall. Detective stories, fantasy, mystery, and ghost stories. Narration by Gkika, for Murder by Craft.